Ava DuVernay's When They See Us is a rich, enraging retelling of the Central Park 5 case. Every week, new original films debut on Netflix and other streaming services, often to much less fanfare than their big screen counterparts. Cinemastream is Fox's series highlighting the most notable of these premieres, in an ongoing effort to keep interesting and easily accessible new films on your radar. When They See Us, the premise, Ava DuVernay, Selma, 13th, co-wrote and directed all 4 episodes of this limited series about the infamous Central Park 5, in which 5 boys ages 14 to 16, none of whom were white, were coerced into confessing to raping a jogger in 1989, then convicted of the crime in 1990. Niecy Nash, Michael K. Williams, John Leguizamo, Vera Farmiga, Felicity Huffman, and many others round out the extensive cast. What it's about: the case of Raymond Santana, Kevin Richardson, Antron McRae, Yusef Salaam, and Corey Wise has gotten the cinematic treatment before, in Ken Burns' 2012 documentary The Central Park 5. But DuVernay's series offers a different way into the story, one made for an age of true crime obsession, and not only is it compelling, but it's desperately needed. When They See Us tells the story in 4 parts, spanning decades. Before the title cards even appear in the first episode, the attack on Trisha Meili, who was jogging at night in New York City's Central Park, has happened. The episode shows how all 5 boys, who barely knew one another, were caught up in the hunt for the attackers and pushed by the police into admitting to the crime, in confessions that are almost comically disjointed from one another. In the second episode, the trial happens. In the third, 4 of the 5 boys, those who were not yet 16, and thus convicted as juveniles, go to jail, and then navigate life after release, where things aren't much better. In the 4th and final episode, Wise, the only one who was convicted as an adult, struggles through a brutal prison sentence. In all, the 5 boys served between 6 and 13 years each. And even when their convictions are vacated in 2002, the years and the dignity that have been taken from them can't be returned. Donald Trump is a minor but key figure in the case. In 1989, as the case moved to trial, he spent about $85,000 of his own money to take out a full-page ad in New York City's 4 major newspapers that called for the teenager's execution. "I want to hate these muggers and murderers. They should be forced to suffer," the ad read. "Yes, Mayor Koch, I want to hate these murderers and I always will. How can our great society tolerate the continued brutalization of its citizens by crazed misfits? Criminals must be told that their civil liberties end when an attack on our safety begins." Trump said in a subsequent TV appearance, in which he said, "You'd better believe I hate the people who did this," meaning the boys, figure prominently into DuVernay's treatment of the story, appearing several times throughout. In one bitterly ironic scene, 2 characters watch the interview and hope that Trump's 15 minutes of fame will be over soon. 12 years after the boy's conviction, the actual rapist confessed, and the young men were eventually exonerated after DNA from the rapist matched DNA found at the crime scene. When asked about the case as recently as 2016, then candidate Trump did not change his tune. All of these elements come together in When They See Us in service of a pointed theme. DuVernay has made a true crime series, with interlocking crimes. Part of it is concerned with discerning what really happens to Trisha Meili, but the rest considers the crime committed against the 5 young men. The criminal justice system is more committed to politics than the truth, and its master is plain, old-fashioned American racism. Critical reception: When They See Us currently has a score of 89 on Metacritic. The Hollywood Reporter's Daniel Feinberg praised the series, writing, "DuVernay, director and co-writer of every episode, approaches their story in ways that avoid typical triumph over adversity narrative tropes. She sometimes prioritizes the intellectual over the emotional or intentionally leaves big gaps in time and perspective. But her choices never feel haphazard. The material mines profound outrage, and the note-perfect ensemble lends it heart. How When They See Us transformed those who worked on it. There's a moment during a courtroom scene when Niecy Nash, playing one of the mothers of the Central Park 5 in When They See Us, has a look of pure grief. The thing is, Nash wasn't really acting in that moment. "I am forever changed," Nash told CNN of her role as Dolores Wise in a Netflix project directed by Ava DuVernay. The limited series tells the story of 5 teen boys of color who were wrongfully convicted in 1990 of raping and leaving a white female jogger for dead in New York City's Central Park. When their convictions were later vacated, the case became a flashpoint in the fight against systematic racism in the justice system. Nash plays the mother of Corey Wise, the only one of the 5 teens sentenced to an adult prison. He was 16 at the time. The actress said she followed news coverage and documentaries on the case over the years and learned how the boys, who spent between 6 and 13 years in prison, had been coerced to make false confessions. "I felt like I was carrying a burden for these boys," Nash said. In 2002, Moshe Reyes, a convicted murderer and rapist, confessed to being the sole attacker in the Central Park case. DNA evidence confirmed his account. Many years later, Ava DuVernay is doing the story of the Central Park 5 and I'm like, "Oh, I have to be of this movie," Nash recalled. What distinguishes the project, Nash said, is that DuVernay tells the story from the viewpoint of the boys and their families. "Sometimes you had real-life men on the set and sometimes their families were on the set, so you had to be considerate of that," Nash said. "You had to lean all the way into the art and telling the story. It's a story of suffering that was painful to revisit," Nash explained. "It's the only job, I'll tell you, I've ever been on where they provided crisis counseling for you if you needed it at the end of the day," she said. Blair Underwood stars in the series as Bobby Burns, an attorney for one of the boys. He said he joked with DuVernay that only she and possibly Steven Spielberg, who is not connected to the project, could get him back to acting in a courtroom. The actor rose to fame starring as attorney Jonathan Rollins on the hit legal drama LA Law more than 25 years ago. But Underwood said he knew DuVernay was the right leader for the project. "A good director's job is to create an environment where actors feel free to express, to explore and to try things," Underwood explained. "I was so blown away by these 5 young actors, who portray the boys. as young men to be that open, that free with your emotions. It was remarkable. Underwood said he hopes viewers will feel the emotion the cast and crew brought to the series and see how little the world has changed in the past 3 decades. We have an unjust justice system for black and brown people, Underwood said. There are those who will try and deny it, but it really is undeniable, and if this series sparks something in someone, an awareness, then all the better. When they see us, certainly lit a fire under Nash. Since completing the series, she's taken on a new kind of project. I literally walked off the set and became an ambassador for the Innocence Project to help those who've been wrongfully convicted, Nash said. I just had to serve somewhere. End of message. Subscribe for fresh news.